Welcome to the Joy Meets Pain podcast. I'm your host, Dorcas. As a psychotherapist who has worked with children, couples, individuals, and families for decades, I cannot tell you how many times I've heard people say, my family is the worst, or I'm too embarrassed to talk about my family, or no family is like mine. Well, guess what, listeners? All families have ishness, foolishness, happiness, shadiness, loneliness, forgiveness, hopefulness, goodness, and the list goes on. If you come from a family and are trying to navigate your family relationships, then welcome. When I initially started the podcast, I wanted to focus on family, therapy, and food. So some of my episodes were centered around these three topics. Since then, I have dived into more family issues, as you will see and hear in upcoming episodes. Please keep in mind, I am not providing therapy or medical advice. And here's a heads up. Once in a while, I will curse. So if you're looking for a clean, no foul language kind of show, this is not it. Hello and welcome. I'm incredibly excited to introduce myself and to embark on this family life journey with you. As a child, in some of my moments alone, I often reflected on relationships, the great ones, the challenging ones, and the ones that felt really good. Little did I know that I would one day become a psychotherapist and a professor who would also spend a great many years volunteering with children and the elderly. These experiences enhanced my understanding of the power of human connection. I am truly blessed to have my mother, Margaret, as my very first guest. She will share some deeply personal stories about my birth, as well as the significance of my names. As French psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan once said, names are stuffed with hope, memory, and fear. And I think this perfectly captures the meaning behind this conversation. I will have an episode on the names that were given and how they contribute to who we become. My mother and I haven't always had an easy relationship. That too will be a conversation for the episode on mother-daughter relationships. At the beginning of the conversation, you will hear us discuss a Shona expression. Shona is one of the native languages of Zimbabwe. My mother also mentions Dorcas several times. Dorcas is the name of the nurse who helped deliver me and whom my mother honored by giving me her name. Please join me in welcoming my crocheting-addicted mother, Margaret. So today our conversation is about my birth. And before we started recording, actually, I was thinking to myself that you should probably have your own podcast because you have so many stories to share. And I think people would be thrilled to hear everything you have to share. But yeah, I just was having that thought. But yes, today I think we'll focus on talking about my birth. Mm-hmm. And I also had been thinking, because I remember as children, we'd all sit around on the floor and an adult, you or any other adult would say, Paiwapo, and then we would say Nzefunde.
Zefunde.
So can you explain for the listeners what that means?
Paiwapo is the way you start to tell a story. So when I'm telling the story, I'll start by saying Paiwapo, and then the children, whoever is sitting and listening, will say Zefunde, which means we are going to listen to the story.
Okay.
You see.
Okay.
So that's how we used to say Paiwapo. Zefunde. And then you also checking to see if they are paying attention to the story.
Okay,
You see.
okay, all right. Well, I mean, today I'm all ears. And this is a story, I mean, I actually learned for the first time. I remember July 10th last year, we were coming back from England, from Dottie's fabulous wedding,
Yes.
where we had a chance to meet new relatives, old relatives. And you shared the story with me, and I had never known this about my birth before. So I just thought it would make a good introduction to sharing who I am and I think how I came to be. And so it's interesting for me to hear the story of my birth and then to see how I am today and how my birth really shaped who I became. So yeah, I mean, why don't you share with us your experience when you got pregnant with me up until the delivery?
Oh, that's fine. I'd already had 3 children, Tsitsi, Tapua, and Namo. And then, of course, I was one of those unlucky ones who I tried all kinds of birth control, the medications, the loops that they used to use in those days, and it still didn't work because I still ended up with a lot of bleeding problems. So eventually, my doctor said, for now, you better stop. And when I stopped, I had Namo. Namo was like 7 months old. After some time, I fell pregnant. And me, I'm one of those who never used to bring up food when I'm expecting. When I'm not expecting, I could not bring out anything I ate. It stayed in my stomach. So when I started bringing up vomiting and so forth, I said to myself, let me go and check with the doctor. My doctor then was Dr. Murphy. And he said, it's all psychological. It's because we have had your children within a short space of time. It's all in your mind. I said, no, it's not, because I never vomit. I never, even water. It's only when I'm pregnant. And the day I deliver, I stop the vomiting. Even now, have you ever known me to vomit?
No.
No. So after some time, he said, okay, I'll go do a test. And when he did, because I had complications with the other children, he referred me to the only gynecologist that we had in our area, who was a female gynecologist doctor. He was from the Mediterranean countries there. So I went back to her. And she was not very pleased. She didn't like people to have more than 2 children, But then we didn't know. Why you have 3 children already? I said, it just happens. I've been to you, you tried all these, birth control methods, and they've never worked for me. So anyway, I don't mind. I like children. So even with the pregnancy, I was sickly and so forth. Then 7th, 8th month, she started changing her statements. Oh, I might have to induce you, you are past due. I said, no, I'm not. I'm far from being due, And he said, I'm the doctor. I know what I'm talking about. She was a very difficult doctor, Miss Lera. So I said, we'll see. I waited. I tried to prolong it as long as I could. Then he said, oh, I might be traveling. So seeing you have problems, I think I'm going to induce you so that I know everything is okay. And when your doctor is telling you that, you think maybe there are other problems. So I said, okay, that's fine. I went to talk to, I had a lot of friends who were nurses, and my other friend was actually a matron at the hospital. And I said, what do you think? He says, yeah, not Jew, but if she's saying that, maybe there is a problem. So I said, okay. So 8 months, she admitted me into hospital. And then that...
When did you start taking the Pitocin?
Oh, that's what they used to induce the labor.
Okay.
You see. So when I got there, he said, I would, give you Pitocin to help you with the labor. And then when they started inducing you with the Pitocin, you can't the pains can't be, like in normal labor, the pain will come, then it will go away for some time, then it will come back and go away. You can even tell that now I'm probably ready to get the baby out. So she came, told the nurses what to do, and she disappeared. I was in labor the first day. The pains were just getting severe, and the nurses who were there, lucky, one I knew went from home because she had trained in Zimbabwe and she was Zambian. Very nice. And the other girl who was supposed to be on duty, they used to bring we called them sunshine girls that used to come from England. They would work in the hospitals in Zambia for like 2 years, then they go back to their country. And during Idi Amin's time, a lot of people ran away from Uganda. They came and worked in Zambia as nurses, whatever jobs they could get. So we had some of those nurses also from Uganda. The one we were close to her name was Mercy Maduke. So Dorcas managed to, I called my friend, Aunt Priscilla. Then Priscilla called the Mercy Maduke. And she said, okay, I'm off, but I'll come and see what's happening. So the first day I was in labor, nothing was happening. The next day, I could see even the nurses were beginning to panic because I was getting tired. And since the baby, since you were still very small, they started worrying that, the baby wouldn't, come out and would not have the energy to push herself out. So in the end, I ended up with these three nurses, the Dorcas, Mercy Maduke. She was a South African that lived not far from the hospital. She stayed in the hospital. I must remember its full name. So they called her and they came. So the three of them started checking. They are calling the doctor. The doctor is not responding. They are trying to say, I think we have a problem here, or she's not responding. So in the end, Dorcas said, no, I think we have to do a forceps delivery here because the baby is getting weaker and weaker. So
was the problem the amount of Pitocin you were given? Okay.
Yeah, because it made you, like want to push, and then it made the baby's heart weaker.
So who discovered that the Pitocin was too much?
Dorcas, she was a senior nurse to these other two nurses who were there, So she just said, look, the doctor is not responding. Maybe, I think apparently she's gone on a holiday or whatever, a weekend where she was going to go. So let's see what we can do. Then she said, yeah, we are trying to check, but the baby's heartbeat is slow and so forth. So that's how they ended up deciding to do. That was the second day. The one who kept, running in and out and checking and, making sure everything was okay. But even I was tired because I had been in labor 2 days in uncontrollable labor. Because it's drug-induced. It's not the normal labor you go through when you're delivering. I knew I delivered 3 babies before, so I knew there was something wrong. So that's when they decided to say, let's do a forceps delivery, And then when you came out, you were black, you were not crying, So they quickly, rubbed, took you away from me. I wanted to say, I was saying, let me see the baby. No, you'll see her later. You are too tired. So immediately they cleaned me, took me to the side ward and put me there. Then they gave me something to sleep. I woke up middle of the night. The baby is not there. There is no cot, there is nothing. So I was panicking. I'm screaming, please let me see my baby. Say, no, 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 you are tired, you must just rest. The following morning, when I deliver, I have a lot of milk. So I was saying, I have so much milk, I have to express or, bring the baby so I can feed it. They said, oh, the baby is sleeping. She was also tired and so forth. They really tried to comfort me because I was panicking. I didn't hear the baby cry and the baby looked so, the baby has no life, the color is not the pink color, it's a dark color. So eventually, late in the evening, that's the second day. That's when that was the third day because I was in labor 2 days. That's when they came and said, oh, we didn't want to bring the baby to you immediately because the baby had a problem and so forth. And we had to make sure that the baby is okay and so forth. And so I started expressing the milk and they would come and collect it. Then eventually they brought you to see me. It was late, the third day too, late in the evening. That's when they brought the baby. And you were so small, I could tell you were not full term. So I said, what happened? They said, oh, this is what happens. But with this doctor, she's untouchable. Even if you report, nobody's going to take action because she's really connected with the top people.
So the problem was while for one, she induced me too soon. And then two, they suspect or told you she had given you too much Pitocin.
Yes. If they would say if she hasn't delivered by this time, give her another one to keep the labor pains coming. You see, by doing that, it was weakening the baby's heart. Because this is when we found out later, talking to other women who had gone through the same situation and others that she would say, oh no, your wife was bleeding, I have to take her and do a DNC, and knowing that it was easy for her to tie their tubes soon after you deliver. A lot of women found out years later, some who had gone back to their countries. They can't have a baby, but I had 2 children. I had just to be told, how can you expect another baby? Your tubes were tied. She never explained those things, even to the husbands.
Oh.
That's how bad it was when some of the countries that we were in, because people would get away with anything. It was only later we found out she was really practicing genocide in Zambia.
Yeah.
But no one would report it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you ended up naming me after the
Yes. When I found out, I knew what I'd gone through. So when I saw you and saw how small you were, I said, Upapamar, and so forth, which means God given. Because I didn't expect you to save, not just soon after, but after that you were so sickly, and then I kept saying, if Dorcas wasn't there, and Dorcas knew me from when she was doing nursing in Zimbabwe, because they used to come and visit me with some other Zambian friends. So I said, if she hadn't been there, my child would have died. So this is what happened. So that's why you have 2 blessed names. One from the way the Kapandula, you see, I remember even his surname so well. She was a nice person, very, very devoted. And because they'd been in Zimbabwe, they would come to my house, we'd have tea, would chat. It was her, Irene Banda, Ruth Lupunga.
Okay.
But this is how so those 2 names have sort of directed your life.
Right.
You were held
I came out fighting. I'm still fighting.
The way I used to walk with you on my back to the hospital, bless Mr. King, I tell you, you'd come out, Dorcas is so bad. I'll be there in 10 minutes. She would drive in his pajamas, pick me, take me to the hospital, be sleeping in his Mini Cooper. And the doctors will be running up and down and so forth. And you never, of all my children, you are one that never cried for out scared of injections. You didn't even move. Even Mrs. Malindi used to say, this child, I said, do you know her history? How can you say this child? But you just stood there and got your injection and walked away like nothing happened.
Yeah,
That's why you are tough.
I tell you.
Maybe
Well,
the Peterson worked the opposite
oh dear.
of what it was
I
supposed
think,
of
to,
what it was supposed to have done to
to
you.
the opposite
Yeah,
extreme.
kill you. God didn't want you to die because each time I used to go to rush you to the emergency, lucky we were near the hospital then because I could walk even.
Yeah.
Put you on my back, we walk and go there. Sometimes it's 1 a.m. Then they have to phone the doctor. And the doctors were good because they really would come and be there.
Yeah.
This child is a survivor. I
Yeah.
said, yeah, she's a survivor.
Yeah.
She pulled away a poncho that had been stolen by this woman.
Well, I mean, it's interesting that in the beginning, I guess. So you actually didn't see me for a day.
2 days.
2 days.
I didn't see you.
Wow.
And I kept saying, tell me what's wrong. I thought maybe she's disabled or something. You know what goes in your mind. I didn't had problems with the thing, but not what I went through with you, you know.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I just used to say, and then when I started work, I always expected to hear, there's something wrong and so forth.
As I listened to my mom speak, I could not help but feel sad. Sad for myself coming into this world and having no contact for days with the person who had carried me for 8 months. I felt sad too for my mom, knowing everything she had gone through, and also having no contact with me or comfort in knowing that I was okay. It was difficult to hear my mother recount her painful experience of not being able to hold or see me after undergoing such a grueling labor experience. Imagining a newborn separated from their mother during those vital first moments broke my heart in ways words cannot capture. My mother frequently spoke of the kindness of neighbors and friends who stepped in to help as needed. This too stirred a sense of sadness in me, as the idea of it takes a village is absent. In today's world, it has been replaced with phones and things, hence the higher rates of loneliness and suicide. My story resembles that of many Black women whose challenges remain strikingly relevant. In the U.S., Black women experience disproportionately higher rates of infant mortality and other reproductive health complications compared to other racial groups. These ongoing struggles are part of a much larger historical fight for justice. In many ways, we are still fighting against genocide. The story of my birth speaks to the resilience both my mother and I share. She has fought countless battles, personal, legal, and political, and I've carried the same determination into my advocacy for healthcare equity, child and elder abuse, and discrimination. There were parts of our conversation I consciously steered away from. I pondered the origin of the term sunshine girls, which my mother used when referring to the healthcare contractors who were brought from England. Were they called sunshine because they brought light to the sick? Or did the name carry a more complex, perhaps colonial undertone of bringing light to what was referred to as the Dark Continent? When my mother mentioned that I did not cry at birth, I immediately pictured my siblings having an aha moment and saying, "This explains so much about Dorcas's emotional reserve." I hope this dialogue highlighted the value of knowing one's birth story and of recognizing that our mothers may have struggles unseen kept private to protect their loved ones. Learning about my birth story gave me a broader understanding of who my mother is and of who I am and how I navigate closeness and distance. What's your birth story? And what are you fighting for or against? Everyone who knows Margaret knows about the personal, social, political, and legal battles she has fought. I came into this world fighting, and I continue to fight to address health inequities, child and elder abuse, and discrimination. Because of my birth story, I have a better understanding of who I am and how I manage closeness, distance, and emotional expression. So, what is your birth story, and what are you fighting for? I hope you found this episode informative and engaging. If you found it meaningful in some way and have comments to share, or you would like to share your family story, whether joyful or painful, please send an email to info@joymeetspain.com. Thank you for tuning in and for allowing me to spend this part of your day with you. Please like, rate, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And of course, please spread the word. Till next time, stay well and stay present.